Welcome to the Unity Guides Expert Interview Series. My name is Clayton Stenson. I'll be your host today. This series is brought to you by Unity Guides Incorporated, where we help develop Unity within companies running on the entrepreneurial operating system. We do this through fractional integrator services and relationship coaching for the visionary and integrator. And the reason I started this interview series is that I met some pretty amazing people in recent years and had some great conversations, and they've been valuable to me, and I just thought they should be recorded and shared with the world. So I decided to start doing that. And today we're going to talk with another amazing person, Jhana Li. Jhana is an operations coach and owner of Spyglass Ops. So welcome, Jhana.
Thank you, Clayton. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So today we're going to get right into it. We're going to talk about boundaries in the second in command integrator role. So what made you want to talk about this today?
Yeah, it's interesting. As we were selecting a topic, this came up because I think boundaries is one of the things that I see integrators consistently struggle with the most. So a little bit of context for your listeners here, Clayton. I have a coaching program where we are helping up-level and coach operators to the next stage of their career. And, there's the tactical and technical and knowledge side of that transition and growth. But what I find myself working on way more with our members and our students is boundaries, communication, and mindset, because these are the real things that hold integrators and operators back from taking the next step in their career or from adding the highest possible value to their company. And so when you were talking about, like what could we share with this amazing audience, it was just one of the first things that came to mind.
Awesome. So I can totally relate. I find that usually it's not like the hard skills that pull people back. Like and integrators, second in commands, typically they want information. They're learning, they're growing, they're trying to understand everything, right? And that gets them the hard skills.
Yep,
right.
absolutely.
But it's like boundaries, emotional maturity, relational conflict, like all of those things are, you can learn those too. You can read a book and learn those things too, but they're not, probably the first place that type of person goes by default.
Right. Absolutely. Right. I've seen so many incredible integrators who have all the technical knowledge and all the hard skills in the world. And yet they are passed over for promotions. They are not given the raise when they ask for it. They jump from job to job because they don't feel like their value is being truly seen or respected, but that pattern continues to play out. They know what should be done in a company, and yet they're unable to make it happen, or they don't actually do it. Why do these things happen? They happen for underlying reasons of mindset and belief systems and communication skills. And so, yeah, I completely agree. It's not the hard skills. It's not the technical knowledge that holds the average operator back. It's their ability to advocate for themselves and set boundaries around their role.
And I would say even advocate for their perspective.
Completely agree.
Because the visionary has one perspective that is good and valuable and important. The integrator typically has another perspective that is also equally valid and important, and maybe sometimes more important. Just depending on the context.
Totally. And this was one of the hardest lessons that I had to learn myself. So another piece of context, before I was an operations coach, I was a COO, right? So I am an operator by trade and by heart. And by far the greatest failings in my career as an operator and a COO came from this exact reason, which is that I didn't understand at the time that no one else in the company saw things the way I did. It just never crossed my mind, right? Because it's so obvious to me when I look at a business. It's so obvious. It's neon signs everywhere pointing towards things that could be better, or things that aren't working, or gaps that could be closed. And I just didn't realize that not only did nobody else see those neon signs, but nobody else cared in the same way that I cared. And that it was actually a really critical skill that I needed to learn and develop, was the act and the skill of translation, so that I could convert what I was seeing, which is big neon signs, into language that they could understand. So I could get their buy-in and and I could help them see the value of what it was that I was seeing and that I wanted to bring to the table.
Yeah, that's really good. And you're describing me.
I think I'm describing all of us, right? Like we all struggle with this.
Well, you're describing me, my first operations type role, right? Because I was the same way. I would just like assume that everyone could see what I see.
Of
And I
course.
like, let's, why is everybody not doing it? Why are they not fixing this? Like, and I never, like you said, translated, right? I made a lot of assumptions that people saw what I saw,
Yep.
which made me frustrated and angry because they didn't. And and I didn't know how to advocate for my perspective because I didn't know I had to because I thought
Yeah.
everybody else could see it.
Oh, so perfectly said, right? I just didn't know that I needed to do that. And I didn't know and I didn't realize that while sometimes it doesn't feel fair, I think, Clayton. Like when I start to work with my operators, they're on this, they're like, why is it my job to translate? Why is it my job to help others see what I see? And the counter I have to that is like, it doesn't, what is your job is to get the thing done, right? What's your job is to create the system, to roll it out, to get buy-in, to create efficiency. Your job is to get the job done. And the translation is standing in the way of you doing the job. So even if it doesn't feel fair, it's a necessary step and it's a necessary skill to achieve the outcome. And it's a cop out, frankly, for us to say that I'm not going to translate it because it shouldn't be my job. Your job is to make it happen. And this is just one of the necessary skills, like systems and automations knowledge and technical knowledge. Like it's just as key of a skill as anything else when it comes to really making it happen. It doesn't matter that it doesn't feel fair. It's required to get the job done.
Yeah, life isn't fair.
And the only person that suffers is you, right? If you don't learn the skill, the
You don't
only
embrace.
person held back by that, only person frustrated by that is ultimately going to be you.
Yeah. And I just want to take this in a slightly different direction
So,
because I think this will be helpful to people if there's a visionary watching or if it's an integrator watching. So if you're an integrator watching and you hear what Jhana is saying and you're like, yeah, dang, that's me, right? Like I've been on that journey and that puts into words what I'm feeling. I want you to understand that your visionary feels the same way,
oof, yeah,
but just about something different.
yeah,
Because what I hear visionaries say is, why don't these people get it?
yeah, totally.
But
Yep,
it's a different thing. It's a different
right,
sign that you probably can't see.
totally, totally.
Right? Like they're frustrated because people don't see the vision and they're not fired up about things and
Right.
that they have to repeat themselves so many times. It's very similar
Yeah,
feeling, but it's just a different
yeah.
perspective. Right? What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely love it. The metaphor that just popped into my mind is like, what if one of you saw X-ray and one of you saw ultraviolet, right? You're seeing you're both seeing reality. You're both seeing true data. You're both seeing things that actually exist, but you can't see the other person's wavelength. You have two fundamentally different lenses on the business. And so you're seeing X-ray and you're like, why aren't they seeing X-ray? And they're seeing ultraviolet. Be like, why don't they get it? And I think the most beautiful partnerships are the ones where both partners can take accountability and ownership for the fact that nobody else sees what they see. And it's
Mhm.
their responsibility and opportunity ultimately to learn how to communicate that through the other person's language and lens and
Mhm.
wavelength. And when both partners can come to the table around that, amazing. But even if only one person is willing to do it, then if that person is willing to show up and do it, the relationship will be better and it will ultimately get more done. Because what the business needs, right? Let's remember why we all do this. It's ultimately to serve the business. The business needs both X-ray and ultraviolet because both of those things are either harming or serving the company and need to be looked at.
Mhm. That's good. That's really well said. Yeah, and I often do analogies of marriage, right? Men and women are, this is a generalization, but generally speaking, they're different.
Sure.
they,
Sure.
they
Yep.
see the world differently, the same way the visionary
Fair.
do.
Yeah.
One sees ultraviolet, one sees whatever you other
Right.
one was, right? And
Yeah.
it is incredible
Yeah.
when you embrace that, like accept that you see it differently
Yep.
and learn how to take advantage of that, right? Like to
Totally.
make that a good thing. Um,
Totally.
it's not easy.
No, it's not.
It
It's not.
requires
But this is
time, right?
also, sorry, yeah. This is also where we circle all the way back around to boundaries, right? Because when faced with this information, speaking from the operator lens and integrator lens, I see a lot of integrators kind of crumble under all of the pressure of a team and a CEO that don't understand them. And they are consistently getting buffeted and pushed into a series of roles that are not their, that are not operations, that are not being an integrator, that are not their job, right? I call these roles things like the rebound board, the garbage collector, the everything else person, right? Like these are hats that, because the people around us don't see what we see, they don't understand the full value of what we bring to the table. We're just such competent, get shit done people that it's so easy for your team and your CEO to like delegate and relegate these hats to you. Just like, oh, you just need something done? Just go to this person, they'll handle it. Oh, you just need a fire or a mess cleaned up? Just go to this person, they're so good at that. And none of that is operations. None of that is your job. Those are just the things that people come to know you for. And when it comes to setting boundaries, right? The first step of setting appropriate boundaries around your role is taking and owning and claiming your unique value to the business. Like, no, guys, I'm not here to be your garbage collector. I'm here to see in freaking X-ray, see the things that none of you all are seeing, and save us a ton of money in the process. And I can't do that if I'm the everything else person, if I'm the garbage collector, if I'm the rebound board. And so when it comes to setting boundaries, it starts with a self and personal identity and a pride in what we are and what we bring to the table, so that we can be confident and firm in the boundaries that we have to set. Because otherwise, everyone will continue to throw things at you all day. And it will frankly be easier for you to just become the everything else person as opposed to step into your full potential and value in the company.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautifully said. In my first integrator type role before I knew about EOS, I would say I was probably more that type of person, right? Where
me too.
They would be like, hey, this thing's broken, can you fix it? This thing's broken, can you fix it? And I didn't know how to say no. And it was different because I wasn't in an integrator role. You know, I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to push back. And all I could see was neon signs that said, this is broken. All like we needed to fix like overarching everything. And I was focusing on fixing small things rather than fixing the whole system. Right. And it frustrated me, but I didn't know how to communicate it. I didn't know how to change it. And and then I moved to a different company, worked there for 3 years, and then I did become the integrator. And you know, I discovered EOS and a system for how to run things. And then when I read Rocket Fuel, I remember the lights going on, and I was like, okay, this is valuable. Like this is extremely valuable, this skill that I have. And prior to that, I never really owned it the way that you're talking about. But since then, I've just stepped into it, and I'm like, you know, and still people don't fully understand it, I don't think, right? Like this integrator role, but I'm, you know, I think I've become much better at translating it and explaining it to people, and been very successful because of it.
Absolutely.
And I love it. But it is a bit intangible, you know, some of the things that we do. So it is hard for people to understand, for sure.
Clayton, do you have a singular definition of the integrator role that you use to define it to yourself or to others?
That's an interesting question. When I explain it to somebody in the team that I'm starting to work with, what I say is that I'm here to help basically make everything work better together. But when I tell them that, I say, it's not, I don't have all the answers. I have some ideas for sure. And I have great experience, but primarily my job is to ask you questions and to draw out the answers from you and help you come up with a plan. And then I will hold you to your plan. Because I can come in with all the answers and tell you what to do, but you won't do it.
Of course, never. That's not how that works.
Right? Like you probably won't. Right? It's, you know, and I've heard, I was on a great, well, you know, Tim Spiker, right? Yeah, I think it was Tim that introduced us. Right. And I was on Tim's podcast a while back, and his way he put it was that's like command and control, coming in and telling people what to do. And he said, short term, you'll probably get better results. with
Mm.
control, but long
Hmm.
term, you will
Yep.
hit the wall.
Yep.
Whereas if you translate, right, and cast vision and draw things out of people, and you have good boundaries, and you challenge people, and you do the things that I just described, you will have slower results, but you will go far, much,
Right.
much
They
far.
will be long lasting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll
Yep.
change people, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm 4 months into my current clients, working with my current client, and every week I feel like another person gets it. Like the
Mm.
light goes on, and they
Mm.
step into their, like they actually step in and own their role,
Amazing.
right? And
Amazing.
so I'm starting to see this momentum starting to build. Yeah, it's taken us 4 months, right? But the momentum's going to start to build to the point where I won't be able to stop it.
There's a really key, like, golden nugget that I just want to pull out and make
Yeah,
explicit in how
please.
you position yourself to these team members, because what I see so many operators struggle with feeling like they are on one side of their table and the team is on the other side, or that team member is on the other side. And it's you versus me. And it's almost antagonistic, right? And the team member perceives it that way of like, why is operations stepping into my business, telling me how to do my job, trying to fix a system that from my lens, I don't see the neon light. I just see everything was working fine. It worked for me. My like sticky note system on my desktop, don't mess with it. It works fine, right? And the operator's like, oh
Yeah.
my God, are you crazy? What are you talking about? And what I what I always what I love about how you position it, what I always ask my operators to do is like, how can you reframe this so that it's you and the team member on the same side of the
Together.
table, right? It's not you versus me, it's us versus the problem. And actually, my role in all of this is to support you, team member, in solving your own problem. I'm just bringing a unique lens and a unique set of tools to you to help you do that. I'm here in support of you, and I'm here to
Mhm.
help you make your life better. And there's two pieces there. One is that you align on the same side of the table, and immediately you're going to get more done because it's no longer an antagonistic relationship. And then
Mhm.
number two, you're putting ownership in their court, right? Like ultimately, this is your problem, and it is also your opportunity and your ability to solve it. I am just here to support. I am just here to hold you accountable. I'm just here to bring some ideas to the
Mhm.
table. But ultimately, this is you
Mhm.
making your own life better. And when that ownership and empowerment is in place as well, I see team members are way more likely to adopt and accept whatever ideas you're
Yeah.
trying to get them to like conform to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. And I don't know if I just naturally thought this way. Maybe I've been led poorly enough,
You
right?
like you felt
That
what it was like to not receive that. Yeah,
like in my
I
early
think we all
years
have.
of
I think
my
we all have.
career, that
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. But I remember when I first was promoted integrator, I told the team, we're gonna increase accountability, because we're very, we're very not good at that essentially. And I remember, but I remember sitting down with the person who used to be my boss, because I was promoted past him, and I just said, hey, you know what? Uh, I'm going to ask you a lot of hard questions now,
Mm,
this role, but I just want you to know that I'm asking you the questions because I want you to succeed,
yeah. Huge,
right?
huge.
I'm not asking you to be a jerk or to be command and control. I want you to succeed genuinely, because if you succeed, I succeed.
Mm,
And if I succeed, the company succeeds,
yeah.
right? So it's not, I started with that, right? Like
Yeah.
this
Shared
is,
goals.
yeah, we're in this together, right? If I don't
Totally.
ask you this hard question, you're going to fail, right? So how does that help you,
Right.
right? And I remember after about 6 months working with him in that role, I took him for lunch. I said, hey, let's just go for lunch, and I'd love to just chat and see how you're doing. And he said, hey, Clayton, I just want you to know, when you first took the role and you start talking about accountability, I was like, oh, I don't want Clayton to be holding me accountable and cracking the whip.
Mm,
That he's like, that's what I thought it was going to be.
that's what it, yeah, totally.
But he said, that is not what it has been.
Mm,
He said, it has been the opposite of that. Like, you
mm,
have genuinely helped me to do better. And you've lightened my load, because,
amazing.
he would say, oh man, I'm taking 120 calls a day. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not sustainable. So I said, what are we going to do to get some of those calls off of you? Right. So I'm not, I'm trying to help him. Right. And I did, we raised up other people and train other people so that they could take some of those calls. Right. So in the end, he's like, I loved it. He loved it. I loved it. And we 22 times net profit in a year. Yeah. So, it's just, I guess, like you say, it's important to get on the same side of the table, essentially,
Yeah. Yeah.
because if you come in and people think you're their enemy, and you're gonna feel that, like I feel that when I start in a new fractional role, there's people thinking that,
Yep.
sure,
Yep.
right? And so part of my system is I need to meet with all the core people one-on-one
Yep.
to
Yep.
be able to get to know them a little bit and for them to see that I'm human, right? And
Mm.
tell them kind of a little bit about the way that I work, right?
Yeah, that's a great tactical hack. Like if you can bring it back to just a human to human relationship, that also just goes so far, especially when like what your role requires is getting people to change ultimately, right? Like that's the deliverable is changing human behavior. And people don't like change. I don't think any human likes change. So it's already a difficult job before you even step into it. And I think that we make it even more difficult on ourselves by handcuffing ourselves when we make it everyone else's problem to get on board with me, as opposed to making it my job to get on board with everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did talk about that on that Tim Spiker podcast
Nice.
bit. I call it the flaming integrator, who just
Mm,
who doesn't put people first. They put process
mm,
first. And
yeah.
it's not going to work. And that's what I did. The
Yep.
first time I was sort of in an operations role, is that, like you said, I didn't translate,
Yep.
and it and
Absolutely.
and it didn't go well, and I didn't understand well, and I was very frustrated and angry
Me too.
about it.
Me too. Yep. Absolutely. I've had incredible opportunities absolutely blow up in my face just because I didn't realize at the time that it wasn't enough to know the right thing to do. Being technically savvy, not enough. It's not enough to have the right answer. The job isn't to have the right answer. The job is to get people to go along with it. And so I now tell my operators, like, I honestly think it's 40-60. Like the technical skills are the less important half of the job. The most important, the 60% of the job is the human side and
Mhm.
learning how to, I call it like Jedi mind trick people into accepting your systems. Jedi mind trick your CEO into getting on board with your game plan, right? Because ultimately it doesn't matter if you have all the right answers if no one goes along with it. It's
No.
useless. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
at all. And so, as much as it may feel frustrating or unfair sometimes, it's the job and it's the more
Mhm.
important half.
Yeah, I just thinking of, so the church that I used to attend,
Mm,
there used to be a pastor, like when I first was there, and someone told me that he had this incredibly amazing ability to coach and correct you on something without you knowing that he did
love it. Jedi
it.
mind trick, man. That sounds like a Jedi mind trick to me.
Right? Like you'd have the conversation and you'd go away from it feeling good and moving in a better direction. And then like later that day, you'd be like, dang.
Right. He got me.
But you loved him
Totally.
because he had a best interest at heart,
Right. Right.
right? And the best interest of the
Yep.
organization at heart, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
um, so that, it's almost like if you can get them to think it was their idea, right?
Exactly.
You have an idea and you think what the right path is, but you have a conversation and make people think, okay, and I guess not that you're tricking them, but it become their idea is
Yeah.
the key, right? And then
Yeah.
if it's their idea, they won't drop it, they won't put it down because it's theirs.
Yep. Yep. And the reality is that the final reframe here is like, what a beautiful opportunity that we are presented with, that we have the unique part of our role that asks us to learn to become Jedi masters. Like, what a kick-ass opportunity. How lucky am I that it's hard and it's frustrating as hell, but
Challenging,
I
yeah.
get to learn and level up in this way. It becomes part of my job to learn and to level up in this way. Oh my God. And what an incredible skill set to have to bring not just into work, but into every element of your life to understand. how people think, to understand what changes and moves behavior, that is infinitely valuable. And so
Yeah.
to every operator out there that being like, but I don't wanna, why not? You get to learn to become a Jedi. Do it. And there is a set of tactical skills, right? It's not magic. It's not a magic trick. There is a hard and fast set of steps, set of tactical skills, scripts, tools that you can learn and use to master this skill set. It's not something that some people are born with or not. And so to have the opportunity to learn and level up in that way, to me, even though it was totally frustrating at the time, ultimately has made me a significantly better leader, and I would like to say human being, because
Mhm.
it's changed all of my relationships and how I relate to just people as a whole.
That's good. And I'll just say this too, and this was a kind of an aha moment that I had kind of in the early part of my discovering that I was an integrator. I remember sitting there and thinking, man, I wish I made more money. I want to make more money, right? Like I think everybody wants to make more
Mm,
money.
yeah.
And I don't know why, but a light went on. And I don't know if it was a book I read or if it was a podcast or what it was, but I remember just realizing I am paid what I'm worth. I am paid the value that I add
Yep.
and the impact that I have
Yep.
is the value that's is the amount of money that I make.
Yep.
Right. And that was like a turning point in my life.
Mm,
I just changed my mindset. It's
mm,
like, okay, how can I add more value? Right. And so I started to add value and then started to learn this translating thing like we're talking about. And,
yep.
and, my income has probably quadrupled
Yep.
since then. And that would have been
Yep.
like probably 12 or 13 years ago.
Yep. Yeah, it
Right.
didn't even take that long, right?
Yeah. And that's not being an entrepreneur either. Like the last 4 years as an entrepreneur, right? And it's probably doubled in the last 4 years because of that. But I just, like you said, it's hard.
Mhm.
I don't want to learn it. Why should I have to translate? Well, if you want to have a bigger impact and create bigger value, then
Yes.
that's why you need to learn it. And you will get paid as well.
You will get paid. You will get the promotion, right? And I'll add and layer in my own aha moment on top of yours, because I had that aha moment and then I had one more. And this one really gut punched me, which is that value, value creation and the value that you create is actually less important than the perceived value of what you create. Because I had your aha moment, Clayton, and then I immediately said, but I add so much value. They just don't see it, right?
Ah,
They don't
yeah.
see everything that I'm doing, how hard I'm working. They don't see how much money I just saved them. They don't, right? Like they don't see, I know I'm creating value. So if I should get paid according to the value I create, I should be getting paid more. But when I go in for the raise, I don't get it. And the aha moment that,
Mm.
again, through trial and error and hard knocks, what I learned is that actually the value you create doesn't matter as much as the perceived
That's good.
value.
That's
Does
good.
your CEO see it? Does your team see it? Do they care? Do they understand how that thing that you did to the meetings actually made them money? Right? If we're talking about value, how did it make me money? How did it make the company money? How did it save us money? How did it help us grow? So back to the translation thing, when we can translate our value from like what we know to be true, which is like for this complicated mind map of reasons, don't you see how helpful I am? They don't. They don't see it. But how can you translate that into dollars and cents so that the perceived value of your work matches the actual value of your work? Because then I will give you a raise. Then
Yeah,
I will
that's
promote
good.
you because I
That's good.
fully acknowledge and understand everything you've brought to the table.
That's good. And I want to add to that because I think this is a common issue between visionaries and integrators, right? And for me, I remember when I was first kind of learning to work with visionaries, I would talk about my feelings and how I
Mm,
feel like this is happening and I feel like I'm making progress here and I
yeah.
feel this
Yep.
and I
I did that too.
feel that.
Yep.
And the visionary is like, I don't care. Like they wouldn't
Right.
say this. I don't care about what you feel.
Right.
Give me some stats. Give
Show
me
me the
some,
numbers.
prove to me that
Yep.
it's not just that you feel good. I'm glad you feel good, but I
Right.
don't really care. I want to know
Right.
as the bottom line, Are we
Yeah.
making more money? Are we more
Yeah.
profitable? And that
Exactly.
kind of thing. So that's kind of a, you know, a danger. That's a pitfall where
Yep.
you can you know, you're speaking your language again,
Right.
right?
Especially because so much of the operations role happens behind the scenes. So not only do they not like care, they don't see it in the same way you do, but they literally just don't see it, right? They don't see all the hard work. They don't see all the holes that you saved them from and that they never fell into, right? I once got this amazing quote out of an otherwise terrible book that said, "Off like world-class operations is measured in what didn't happen. It's the team member that didn't quit. It's the cultural fire that never got started. It's the client escalation that never took place because the right systems, the right team, the right structures were in place." And that is so true and also so frustrating because what an impossible thing to quantify. What an impossible thing to go to your boss and say, "I saved you hundreds of thousands of dollars that didn't fly out of this company, but I can't prove that to you because they didn't fly out of the company," right? It's a hypothetical. It's a what if.
Yeah,
What if
yeah,
I hadn't been here? And so my advice to operators in what is a pretty impossible situation is it comes back to that self-advocacy, right? When you know that you did something good, when you know that you saved the company money, when you know that that thing could have happened and didn't, it is also part of your job, your responsibility, your opportunity to bring attention to that, to be proud, to lay it out on the table, to say, "I did this thing," to say, "Isn't it amazing that this thing happened this way, visionary? Because a year ago, the same thing happened and it didn't happen this way. It exploded into a fire that cost you 3 months. And this time it only cost us a week. And look what I did," right? We have to actively draw attention to these things because otherwise they can and will be taken for granted. And that's not your
yeah,
CEO being selfish or not seeing your value. It's a thing that literally didn't, they
yeah.
won't notice unless you draw their attention to it.
Hmm. That's beautiful. Yeah, so true. It brought to mind. So I, you know, I used to be a pastor and work at a church, and I think the worst job, volunteer job at a church is the sound guy.
Okay.
And it's the same reason. If the sound guy does his job
Right.
well,
Yes.
no one will notice.
Exactly. Exactly.
If they screw up,
Right. They only notice if you screw up.
everyone turns and looks at them,
Yep. Yep.
right? So yeah, it's a similar kind of a thing. You know,
It's a perfect metaphor.
integrators add value in ways that are very hard to manage, to understand, and to see. But you can feel it, which is the danger, you know, that you can try to communicate in that way. So yeah, I love that. And that's, we're right back to the translating thing. You need to
Yep.
translate and help the visionaries see the things that they are not built to see. And it's the other way too, right?
Yep.
Like there's things that the visionary could get frustrated because like I'll give you an example here. When I left 2 years after I left being my first integrator role, I remember my visionary reached out to me and he said, "Hey, Clayton, I I'm desperately missing what you used to do here. And we've
Mm,
stopped everything that you used to do here and it's
mm.
been good. But I think I have my new integrator." And he's like, "Could you train him? Could you teach him?" And I said, "Yeah,
Wow.
I could do that." He's like, "There's just one problem." And I said, what's the problem?" "I don't know if he's visionary enough."
Mm.
And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Right? Like it's not,
Right.
there's an element of that. Like I'm not totally dismissing what he said, but it's the difference
Yeah.
that makes it work,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yes, you need to be able, like I'm fairly high on visionary, so I think that helps me in some ways, that I can
Yep.
speak the language maybe a little easier and quicker than most. But it's the difference that makes it powerful, right?
Yep.
Not the similarity. And the more
Yep.
different you are, the more hard it'll be, but probably the more fruitful it'll be if you can figure it
Right.
out.
Right. Yep, fully agree. And I think actually languages is probably a better metaphor than whatever nonsense I was talking about with X-ray and ultraviolet. Like it's like you're speaking English and they're speaking Spanish, right? Like
Yeah.
you're yelling at each other, really important information, but the other person literally cannot understand you. But the beautiful thing about that is that languages can be learned. You can learn Spanish. right? And it doesn't matter if you don't speak a word of Spanish when you start versus what you're saying, Clayton, which is like, I was like proficient from birth. But even if an integrator is stepping into the role with zero Spanish in their pocket, you can learn. And by learning that skill, you get immediately and directly
Yeah.
rewarded in the form of more responsibility, more opportunity, more doing the work that you love, more adding value and impact to the organization. And all of that means more financial gain, promotion, and growth to you.
Yeah. And everyone.
Yep.
Right. And I would, I just want to go back to the adding value thing, and the perception piece. I think that's awesome. But it's not just with the visionary and the integrator that you need to create that perception. It's with your team too, right? If people perceive that you are adding value and helping them and making their life better and make them more successful, and that will lead to their promotion and raises, they will fight for you.
Huge point. Yep.
Right? Like they
Yep.
will come alongside you and they will go into war.
Right. And they'll be your ambassadors. They'll be the people that tell your CEO, man, this thing was terrible before, but now it's awesome. And it's all
Yeah.
thanks to Clayton, right? Again, perceived value. One thing
Yeah.
for you to say how awesome you are. It's a whole other thing for everybody else on the team to be telling your CEO behind your back how awesome you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also advocating on your behalf for things too.
Totally.
If there's a problem person or somebody that's not on board, they're not just gonna, they're not just gonna be quiet and, allow that person to say bad things. They're gonna be like, no,
True.
you're wrong. Like Clayton's
True.
awesome and
Right.
he's helped me so much. And, I actually had that situation recently with my client. One of the team members told me that actually happened. Like that
Amazing.
the one person was being really negative and she was like, no, like, because we bought what the heck is EOS book for a bunch of the core
Mm,
people. She's
mm.
like, stop being negative about EOS. Like, read the damn book. It's really good.
And that means, I mean, again, it means so much more peer to peer than it does top down, right? Like, no, everybody's a little bit resistant to authority coming in with the new
Yeah.
idea. People are way less resistant when their work best friend is like, hey, have you read this book? It's kind of awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mhm.
what other boundaries and challenges do you see out there?
Yeah. So I think we've covered a lot of them, right? So the
Yeah.
first is boundaries with others, boundaries with team, boundaries with CEO. I think the one that we've touched on, but not so explicitly, is like boundaries with self. Because I see in integrators across the board, we are deeply service oriented people. We want to serve. We want to say yes. We want to help you. If you have a problem, I want to help you. And it is physically difficult for me to not help you if I have the tools or the means to do so. And so, what I see a lot of, I see the pattern play out again and again that integrators sideline themselves. They take on all of these menial tasks. They take on all of these menial questions and answer them. They become that go-to person for their team because they're service oriented and because frankly it feels good to be the go-to person. But what they end up doing is that they end up eating up 80% of their own time doing the things that are not driving massive value, massive impact to the organization, the things that will get them noticed, the things that will get them promoted or raises, right? And again, it's so easy for us to be frustrated and say, well, my team is coming to me for everything. So I don't have a choice, right? My team needs me. But the reality is that what your team needs you to do is be the damn integrator. What your team needs you to do is to call out the neon signs and get to work fixing them because literally nobody else on the team and at the company can do that. You are the only one. And if you're allowing yourself to get sidetracked and sidelined into all of this low value, low level work, then you're not doing your best by the
Mhm.
team. You're
Yeah.
not serving them,
Yeah.
right? And so the hardest part when it comes to boundary setting is boundary setting with ourselves and asking ourselves the question, is that actually my job? Is that actually my highest value contribution to the business? And if not, the actual act of service here is to say no. The actual act of love here is to let my team learn how to solve their own problems, how to handle their own issues. Like it's like trying to raise kids. If you're always giving them everything that they want, You raise spoiled, terrible kids. We all know that. So why
Hmm.
do we do the same thing for our team? We do it because it feels amazing to be loved. It feels amazing to be wanted. It feels amazing to have the right answer. But
Hmm.
when we put ourselves in that position, we ultimately undermine and undercut the entire organization, because the organization doesn't need you to be the go-to person. The
Hmm.
organization needs you to be the integrator. And you
Hmm.
have to be able to protect and preserve your time to
Yeah.
spend it on those highest value things.
Yeah. And you're undercutting your team's growth too.
You are.
Right.
Yep.
And I have a great story for this. When I was first integrator, I remember I love my visionary that I was with back then. He's a great guy. We're still friends. And I remember I texted him or called him and asked him a question. And his response, I think it was text, was Google it.
Amazing.
And I was like, what? Like,
Rude.
you're such a jerk. Right. Like that was kind of my initial response. Like,
Totally.
what,
Totally.
rude? Like, help
Yep.
me. Like, I need your
Yep.
help. And
Yep.
then, but then, and then, so then I Googled it and I found the answer.
Yep.
And I was like, huh, interesting.
Mm.
And that's been something that I think about ever since, right? Is
Yep.
like, am I, am I empowering somebody to think, or am I
Mhm.
creating dependency?
Yes.
Right. And I see it within my teams. There's people within my team right now that are creating dependency, and we've had conversations, and we're working on that and trying to upskill people and develop people. But it's also like, I remember one of the team was like, I don't feel like I can go on vacation because I'm needed. I'm so needed. I can't go on vacation. I'm like, no, you go on vacation,
Yep.
because then they'll have to figure it out.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, you're going to come back and there's going to be some fires and there's going to be some issues and stuff that you're going to have to clean up for sure. But they will have to step it up and it'll be good for them.
Yep.
And I remember I used to do that when I worked at the church years ago. I would go intentionally to the mountains where there was no cell phone service.
Yep. Yep.
It's like, people, here's instructions for what needs to happen this week, but I'm out. Figure it
Yep.
out.
Yep. And to all the visionaries listening, same exact thing applies, right? I think that this is a commonality and a truth for both visionaries and integrators, which is that they occupy such important, powerful roles within the company that we trick ourselves into thinking our job is to just be there. Our job is to be available. Our job is to be there if something happens or if something's needed. No, your job is to be the visionary. It's to drive vision, to drive the company forward. Your job is to be the integrators, to create efficiency. It's to solve root causes. Your team doesn't need you for day-to-day stuff. And if they do, you haven't done your job as well as you could when it comes to leadership and empowerment. Like that's the tough truth.
That's the
That if your
truth.
team is coming to you for everything, it's actually data that says that your leadership is lacking and you have an opportunity to level up
Oh,
there.
you just dropped the mic.
Oh, it's so, and guys, I'm saying this with so much love because I learned every one of these lessons by messing it up,
I
right? I
did
learned
too.
every one of these lessons because I didn't know it and I saw it play out in my life where I failed or I held myself back or I wasn't able to deliver on my highest potential value. And that was so frustrating to me until I finally like stopped pointing the finger at everybody else and learned and asked myself, how am I accidentally creating this? How am I accidentally responsible for this? And
Mm-hmm.
that's such a tough pill to swallow. But on the flip side, it's the most empowering thing that you can do for yourself. Because at the end of the day, for all the Jedi mind tricks in the world, you can't force anyone to do anything. You can't force your CEO to change. You can't force your team to get on board. We don't have that level of control over anybody except yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's our problem, if we created it, all of a sudden it gets to be our solution. We can actually do something about that. Versus if we're pointing fingers at everybody else, then you're shit out of luck because you can't ultimately force that person to
Mm-hmm.
change in a way that works for you. So in
Mm-hmm.
every situation, every frustrating, insane moment of your day when you just want to scream at something, take a walk around the block and then ask yourself the question, how did I create this? How is this a reflection or a data set that points back towards me? How do I have even some small measure of ownership around this? Because grabbing onto that and taking ownership for that puts it back within your control and it allows you to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm going to go even a little, I feel like a little deeper, because I think sometimes there's a reason why we do this.
Mm.
It's like our value comes from it.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Right. I
It's,
find that
yep.
a lot of visionaries have a hard time letting go because their value is tied up in the success or failure of the business. So they can't
Yes.
let it go because
Yes.
if it fails, then who am I? What value do
Right.
I have?
What does
Right.
that mean about me?
Yeah. And that's,
Yep.
I did a great interview with Benj Miller, founder of System and Soul. And he talked about this, how he went through this journey of letting go of that. Like his business went through a really hard season and it destroyed him. And he had
Yeah.
to reconcile the fact that my business could fail. Does that mean I'm a failure? Does that mean I have no worth and no
Mm.
value? Right.
Mm.
And he had to release this value out of that and more focus on, you know, his identity being wrapped up in the success of his people.
Mm. That's beautiful.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
like now I care about raising people up and empowering people and making a difference in
Yep.
people's lives. The byproduct of that is the success of the business. But
Right.
whether my company fails or succeeds is not important to my
Yep.
value as a
Yep.
person. Being a
And
person.
I see that exact same pattern play out, but on the other end of the spectrum, on the other side of success, which is, like once we've done our work with a client and their operator is rocking and rolling, running the day to day without them, the CEO is suddenly left without a lot to do because their day used to be consumed by all of this nitty gritty day to day chaos, fires, all the things they were
Yep.
getting pulled into. And it's fascinating, Clayton, because most of our CEO clients, when they finally arrive at the mountaintop, the eureka moment they've been talking about and waiting for, like time freedom and flexibility and all these things, they freak out. They freak out and they truly, and they
I believe it. I
self-sabotage
believe it.
and they jump back into the weeds. They will make messes and step on their
Yeah.
people's toes and get involved in things that haven't needed them for months and mess it all up and make a fire. And why do they do that? Because what you just talked about, their identity is tied to being busy, being needed, being and feeling productive every single day. And if
Yeah.
my team and my company can successfully run without me, what does that mean about me? And it's this deeply subconsciously scary as hell moment because when you finally did all the work and you got to the place that you wanted to be, it is like fundamentally challenging to your ego and it
Mhm.
requires a massive level up in that moment. Otherwise, I've seen CEOs self-sabotage themselves to the point that they will scale their companies back down to the size where it's comfortable, to the size where they're needed, because that's what makes them feel safe. That's where their identity and worth is tied.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
kind of
How do
wild.
you how do you think that applies to the integrator?
Same thing, right? Like if you have done such an incredible job of empowering your team that they no longer come to you with every question, that they no longer tap you on the shoulder every single day, wanting you, needing you, asking you to be the go-to person. Again, existentially, but I'm the go-to person. I'm the get shit done person. I've always been that person. I always have the right answer. And now they don't need me. And that is terrifying. And so it's about, again, shifting what you attach your worth to. Your worth is not measured by the number of questions and right answers that you get to field every day. Your worth is attached to the performance of your people. And if your people can solve their own problems, that is your success. If your people don't need you anymore because they've become such autonomous critical thinkers, that is your success. And so
Hmm.
it's changing how you measure success and what you point to in your day-to-day life to the
Hmm.
point that now it's totally flipped for me. If my team is coming to me with stuff that they can and should answer for themselves, that is now a bad thing because it means I haven't done my best work empowering and transferring ownership to them. So
Hmm.
again, it's data is just data, I always say, right? It's not good, it's not bad, it's just neutral. We make
Hmm.
data good or bad in how we interpret it and how we act based off of it. So your team coming to you every single day for questions that you have the answers to could either be great or bad, depending on how you define success and your
Yeah.
identity to that,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So true.
Yeah.
And I've also had to walk this journey out, right?
I
And
think all of us have.
had to overcome that and still struggle with it, from time
Yeah.
to time, but not too much, right? Like my value now, I feel like my value is more in who I am and not what I do.
That I think that's nirvana, right? Like that's where we would all like to be is like I am enough
Mhm.
regardless of the work that I do. And I think there's a ladder. There's a ladder to get there. And I'm certainly
Yeah.
still on the ladder. I've not
Yeah.
arrived there either.
Yeah.
But I
It's
think the first
interesting.
step, yeah, the first step is the self-awareness, right? The first step is that I'm on the ladder and I'm on this rung of the ladder. Even if that's rung 0, you're aware. And now you know that there's
There's a
a
ladder.
ladder to climb.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
You
there's
know,
a
there's a
set of
ladder.
steps. You know there's a ladder. And what I love about the ladder metaphor that I'd never thought of before and just came up with is that you can climb a ladder, right? It's not like a magical hilltop that you need to magically transport yourself to and you're never going to get there because you can't perform magic. It's a ladder. All of us can learn to climb a ladder. And again, it comes back within your control. When it's your fault, when it's your problem, it's your opportunity because now you get to do something about it.
Hmm. That's awesome. There's a ladder you can climb, and there is languages you can learn.
So many metaphors. Sorry, guys.
No, it's good. It's good. Right? Like you can change, you can grow. But yeah, I just, the overarching thing here is for me is like, it's all about personal development and looking in the mirror and, walking it out. And it's not easy, but man, is it worth it?
Totally. And what I love about integrators more than any other group of people I've ever met, my God, do they not back down from a challenge? And do they not back down from the opportunity to learn something? Right?
Yeah.
And so I think the invitation of this episode isn't that it's impossible. It's just that maybe you've been focused on learning the wrong thing. And if you shift your focus towards learning the things that are really going to move the needle, you will show up to that learning curve just as hard and just as committed as you
Hmm.
showed up to every other learning curve in your life, and you
Yeah.
will get there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, if someone wants to learn more about what you do and who you are, how should they get in touch?
Yeah, I mean, clearly I'm pretty passionate about serving operators, right?
A little
Like I
bit,
get
a little bit.
fired up. And it's really, and I'm so grateful and lucky because this is what I do all day, every day. So guys, like Clayton said, my company is called Spyglass Ops. You can look us up online, spyglassops.com. You can look me up. My name is Jhana Li. I'm on all the major social media channels talking about this all day, every day. And it is my absolute pleasure to serve operators and help them grow in their careers. So if you're an operator, hit me up. If you're a visionary who has an operator that you think could grow and level up, hit me up. That is what we do, Spyglass Ops.
Sounds good. On behalf of our viewers, I want to thank you for joining us today, Jhana, and thank you for
Thanks,
sharing your
Clayton.
passion. And
Absolutely.
if today's interview added value to you, please subscribe to this channel for future interviews with experts in the world of business.